All right, so this Halloween, what you can do, leave the candy in the bag. You can bake up something even better.
Nutritionist Dr. Laura Christoph shows us how to make a healthy pumpkin bread right now. Well, pumpkin muffins, same thing, right?
Yeah.
Pumpkin deliciousness with chocolate chips.
Well, let's get started. Let's just get to it. How do we start?
All right. Okay. So, first thing, this is a pretty high protein bread, and so with our wet ingredients, we're going to use 2 whole eggs and then another 4 egg whites, okay?
Where does the protein come in bread? Because normally you don't associate those two.
Yeah, so this bread is going to be a grain-free bread. So it's made with coconut flour, it's made with arrowroot flour, which is a starch that will help that coconut flour rise a little bit, and then a number of eggs as well. So it's a pretty eggy bread, and the eggs are going to make that bread a little bit more high in protein. So it's a little different twist on bread, for sure. With the egg whites, we have chickens, and I don't like to use egg whites from the chickens because I feel like I'm wasting the yolks that, you know, we grew the chickens up. And so I usually buy the 100% liquid egg whites instead of trying to separate them. So we have 2 eggs here that are beaten, and then we have 4 egg white equivalents. Then, in place of the sugar in this mixture, we have a mixture here of melted coconut oil and then some apple cider, which the apple cider has no added sugar in it. You can also mix a 1/4 cup of mashed banana and a 1/4 cup of coconut oil. That's another take on it. Yeah, but I thought I'd go with the apple theme since it's fall. And so you just pour that into. Coconut oil is great because it has the texture of butter because it's a saturated fat, but it has some antiviral and antifungal properties, and it doesn't raise your cholesterol like saturated fat in butter does. And then we have about 3/4 cup of pumpkin. I used canned pumpkin. Sorry.
It's easier.
It's so much easier. And what I never understand, because people tell me you can't really cook with pumpkin that often. If you were to try, do you know what part of the pumpkin you use?
What part of the pumpkin
is it the fleshy part? Is it the guts on the inside, or is it both?
You'd scoop out the guts and you'd bake or boil the fleshy part, and the fleshy part is what you'd use. So you peel off the skin and use the fleshy part. So
we're whipping all that
or
together.
open a can, that's easy.
Yep, or open a can. That's the route I took. I just had to admit it because all these farmers are here today. So we mix that up. And then we have here 3/4 cup of coconut flour. Now, coconut flour is fantastic. There's 5 grams of fiber per 2 tablespoons. So you do have to be careful to not over-consume the coconut flour because all that fiber is a little bit hard on the body. So we have 3/4 of coconut flour, and I've mixed that with a tablespoon of baking powder.
Can I mix it for you?
Go right ahead.
I always like helping out. Gives me some practice so that I don't.
Well, it's funny how many recipes you make from the show, Ashley.
Yes, I do.
She goes home and she's like, what do I want to make? What do we have on the show this week? I can make it now.
Yes.
And as Ashley mixes, I'm going to pour in this arrowroot powder. If you're cooking with almond flour or coconut flour, arrowroot powder is really helpful in making the baked good a little bit more fluffy because it can be really dense if you're just using something like a nut flour there.
Okay.
And then lastly, I'm going to put in a teaspoon of pumpkin spice.
Yes,
you could also
that's magic.
Yeah, you could also put in just some cinnamon and nutmeg as well. Works depending on how you like the taste. And because it's Halloween and this is a nice orange little muffin mixture here, lastly, I'm going to pour in some chocolate chips.
Oh, yes, please.
Right.
So that does mean that there's some added sugar in the product, but a lot less than the typical cup or so of sugar that you would put into a muffin recipe.
Yeah, you need a little sugar in your life, you know?
It's true, very
you know what
true.
I was wondering the other day? We got a box of a chocolate muffin mix. If you make it on your own, do you save any calories or preservatives? What do you gain by making your own baked goods from scratch?
Well, making your own baked goods from scratch, if you look at the ingredients list on the baked goods that you're cooking with, you can probably recognize all the ingredients, such as, you know, wheat flour and sugar and butter. Whereas if you purchase a cake mix, there are probably about 75 ingredients, most of which are chemicals that you don't understand. So when you cook by yourself, even if it's not necessarily a nutrient-dense recipe, at least you know what you're eating. And a lot of times, that's the problem with our culture, is that we buy so many things that are in a package, and when you actually look at the ingredients, you don't recognize half the things that are on there.
That's very true. I have looked at ingredients sometimes, and I'm like, what am I eating?
No, you need an organic chemistry class to understand what's in what you're eating.
You come here and
Or
just
a
tell us
Latin
the
dictionary or
best
That's
stuff to
something
eat.
true,
like that.
very true. So next, so you can see that this is a little bit more dense than a typical muffin recipe, and that's because of the high protein. That's because of the coconut flour. It will rise a little bit, but not too much. So here we have a greased muffin pan, and what we're
do you
gonna
use to
do.
grease it?
I just used a little bit of canola oil to grease this one, but you could use Pam spray. You could use some of the coconut oil to grease the bottom as well. And to have muffins that really don't stick, these coconut flour recipes tend to be a little bit sticky. You can also preheat the muffin pans in the oven a little bit once the oil's on them, and then it really doesn't stick. So that's a helpful tip.
Interesting. And then you put them in, and then how long do you put them in the oven for?
We
What
put
time?
them in, and we put them in the oven at 350 for 15 to 18 minutes. You know, just check on them around 15 minutes, and usually they'll need a little bit more time, but you want to make sure they don't get too brown around the edges. Once the coconut flour starts to burn, it burns pretty quickly.
And that right there, we're looking at it right now. It's the finished product. They look amazing.
Thank you.
Can we dig in?
Great
You are
snack.
welcome to dig in.
Thanks so much, Dr. Christoph. And for a copy of this tasty recipe, you can visit us online, mymassappeal.com later today.
Hey, still to come.